Broadcasting through our flagship station, KNYE in Pahrump, Nevada, and worldwide on the internet. This is Midnight in the Desert. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be in this great, big, wonderful world. Thank you for making us your home for the best in anomalous talk radio, and thank you for joining us in the special observance of Veterans Day. I just want all of our veterans out there to know how deeply grateful the entire staff of Midnight in the Desert is for your service, your work, and continuing diligence to serve and protect our country. I know it's been a very big part of my family's life. My grandfather, great uncle, my father, my boys are serving or have served, and it unfortunately I was unable to serve during my time because of dislocating my knees in about every major sport known to man in high school. But it's nice to know that gene skipped mine and or skipped my kids' generation, and they're back to military service just like their grandfathers and great-grandfathers. So I'm very proud of my boys, and I'm proud of all the people out there that are listeners to this show that continually write in and are a part of our world. Thank you for making us a part of your world, and for all the veterans around the world that tune into the show and write into us telling us how this brings them some relief. Thank you for letting us be a part of that as well. We're going to start off with a quick little news story. Former President Jimmy Carter has been hospitalized for a procedure to reduce pressure on his brain. Former President Carter, 95, was admitted to Emory University Hospital in Atlanta today with an operation scheduled for tomorrow morning, according to the statement from the Carter Center. The statement said the pressure on his brain has been caused by bleeding due to recent falls. President Carter is resting comfortably, and his wife Rosalind is with him. That's what the statement concluded. Carter, whose birthday was October 1st, is the longest living U.S. president in history. The former president suffered injuries in a fall at his home last month that required and received stitches above his brow. He also broke his hip after suffering a fall in his home this past May while readying to go turkey hunting. The former president announced in 2016 that he no longer needed radiation to treat cancer, which had spread to spots in his brain. The 39th Commander-in-Chief served from 1977 until 1981. When he was in his 50s, Carter said earlier this year he hoped there's an age limit to holding the highest elected office in the United States. So the thoughts and prayers of Midnight in the Desert are out with President Carter and his family at this time for a safe and healthy healing from the surgery that he's going to be going through as well. All right, thank you again for tuning in this evening. We've got an interesting show lined up. Michelle outdid herself reaching out to get some fascinating guests that will spend some time with us this evening, again, in observance of military and veterans. In hour 3, Angels in the Trenches is the topic, and we're going to be discussing some interesting stories regarding wartime. And the book is called Angels in the Trenches, about the paranormal during the First World War. So we'll be doing that a little bit later in hour 3. Up first, we have, and we're lucky enough to get Reverend Bill McDonald and Lilia that are joining us talking about military near-death experiences. Army veteran Reverend Bill McDonald is a multiple near-death experiencer, a minister, a chaplain, yoga meditation teacher, PTSD consultant, an award-winning poet, international motivational speaker, artist, film advisor, veteran advocate, scuba instructor, a Vietnam veteran who was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart Medal, 14 Air Medals, the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. He has founded the Spiritual Warrior Ministries, which provides free chaplain services for the military community across the USA. Lilia is a counselor who has been a student of the light for over 40 years and is passionate about serving our veterans and the St. Germain Foundation books. Since an infant, Lilia had numerous life-changing near-death experiences and STEs and were spiritually impactful and transforming. These experiences inspired her to devote her life to the service of others and to raise global awareness about vets, NDEs, STEs, and closing the gap of care, and where experiencers can find their answers about the light. Thank you both so much for coming on to spend some time with us this evening.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you for inviting us.
This is a fascinating aspect to look at, the near-death experience, especially when dealing with veterans in the military. And Reverend McDonald, you yourself are a near-death experiencer?
Yeah, I've had 3. And,
wow.
They didn't happen in combat. In Vietnam, I had some supernatural, mystical, unbelievable things happen that were actually investigated internally in the Army because they want to know what was going on. And even the CIA, as I found out about 47 years later when they contacted me, they had a file on me. So, yeah, I'm all over the place on that. But Lily and I have been working this very diligently here of late, trying to close this gap of care, which she can tell you about. But there's a real issue out there about veterans that are having experiences and not being understood. Lily, can, if you want to tell what we're doing on that.
Sure. Through one of my experiences, I came up with this made this term called the gap of care, which is actually, it's created whenever a patient or a soldier's NDE is not believed or it's ignored by medical professionals. And they're often thought to be a result of hypoxia or a possible adverse reaction to medications or their misdiagnosed as a psychotic event. And at times they're treated with unnecessary medications when in fact they're just near-death experiences. So a soldier having his limbs blown off or whatever, his first experience is waking up in the hospital, and he's confused and disoriented. He's in pain, and what he can remember is just being in heaven or seeing an angel or having an experience, or it could even be a distressing experience, and he or she are very confused. And when they begin to discuss it with typically nurses or some form of medical staff, because that's who's on hand when they first wake up, and they're not believed, and they're misdiagnosed, they're off to the psych ward, and they're given medications, and basically just deemed either psychotic, had a break with reality, or it's because of post-traumatic stress. And it's very hard on a soldier not to be believed. This is a real experience to the vet.
I could only guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that's interesting to me, how easily they're disregarded. But yet, if we go back, and as you were saying, Reverend McDonald, that you had supernatural experiences, something that was powerful enough that made them investigate it, not only through your unit and through that part of the military, but did you say the CIA had a file on you as well?
Yeah, what happened was, if we regress here a little bit about,
please.
About 6 years ago, I had a call, and my identifier on the phone said Langley, Virginia, and I'm going, what is this, right? I was contacted by the CIA, and they were trying to duplicate some of the things that I was recorded as doing or seeing or knowing mechanically. They had a big budget of $28 million. They were trying to do these things, and they wanted to know how I could do these things, and I'm trying to explain to them, well, it's from meditation, it's from its abilities, it's not something you can duplicate with a machine. But they had a file on me, and they wouldn't even tell me what the file said. And then the guy went on talking, saying that, well, actually, we got files on many men like you. And I'm going, and then he shut up. So it was interesting. But I was grilled. I had several events happen over there. We could talk about that later on in the conversation, but I was grilled about those, and I thought at the time they thought I was crazy or something, but it turns out they were dead serious. And when I talked to other people who were part of the Stargate program, some of the people I know that was in it, like David Morehouse and some other people, apparently they were recruiting people not too long after that, going to Stanford for the remote viewing. And the Army had kind of a program, and I heard rumors, even from the CIA, and he wouldn't say anything, but there's like a Jedi warrior project going on. So there may be still a secret organizational thing going on where they're taking people with abilities, small units, and they're using them for psychic warfare.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what type of experiences you were having that were of the supernatural ilk?
Well, first off, I made the mistake of telling people who's going to get killed, what helicopters are going to crash. I mean, the normal things, right, that psychic people do.
Right, yeah, the normal things.
Yeah, and I'm telling the commander, don't let that aircraft out. It's going to crash. This guy's going to get killed. That'll happen. And then when these things all came true, it kind of shook them up, and then they brought in the guys to investigate. But the thing the CA was calling me on and was a story in one of my books. I talk about spiritual armor, and that's where a guy opened up an automatic weapon, an AK-47, on me just about 15 feet away, directly took a shot at me, and one hit me in the chest protector right in the heart, and the other 17 rounds from the clip end up coming out the other side. I was a gunner, crew chief door gunner on a Huey, so I'm sitting facing one way, and then the other side of the helicopter, I got mirror image of myself facing the other direction with the other gunner. But the rounds came my direction, and 17 rounds exited the other side, but there was no entry holes on my side. And so my gunner on the other side had 17 holes in them. And that kind of shook people up. They go, how can you shoot you on this side and there's no entry holes, and they all come out the other side, right? So that was one of the things that we're investigating amongst of a lot of things.
Well, could you explain to me those moments? I mean, how did you know? What triggered in you that you knew this flight was not going to do well? This guy was not coming back. What specifically happened to you to have that moment?
I knew you were going to ask that question. No.
Wow, you're still good at it. I like it.
Yeah, see, I caught that. Anyway, it's not guesswork. It's not a magic trick. It's not going to Vegas and have a guy, do that act or anything. It's just, I mean, And
now, would you tell if you and I are in the same unit and you knew I wasn't coming back? Would you say, Dave, don't go today?
Yep. I made the mistake at the beginning of my tour of telling people, and then when it happened, it spooked other people, because then if I was just talking to somebody and I'd say, hey, did you write your mother? And they go, why? Am I going to get, it was like they got spooked. So that spooks people when you tell people somebody's going to get killed and then they get killed the next day, just like you said. That's not easy for people to take. And it made me feel guilty because I felt like I failed. I warned the guy and I didn't do my job. I didn't protect the guy. And so it took me a long time to, so that's the kind of thing that Lily and I are working on with people, see, because I had guilt feelings about that. So when we meet people like that, we go on survivor's
guilt, right? That survivor's remorse.
Yeah, but something's going to happen to somebody, and what you do to prevent it, and then you find out, it's not your destiny, it's somebody else's destiny. But Lily, you've worked with a lot of different people with the same issue, like Woody, who was an Air Force guy.
Yes. Tony Woody is someone I found on the internet. I was doing research on near-death experiences for a 4-month period, and I was trying to help my clients who were losing their parents, etc. And in the course of doing that 4-month study, I came across Dr. Diane Corcoran, who was the president of IANS, and she's a retired Army nurse, and she is a pioneer in the near-death field, actually, even pre-Moody. She had a 19-year-old boy ask her to come over while she was treating him and said, I have to tell you something, but I'm asking you, please don't tell anybody. Please, I'm scared. She says, no. He goes, please believe me. So he started telling her about seeing God. And she said, please, I'll believe you. Just tell me the story. And he did. And he had such relief. And from that day, she made it a campaign to try to educate the medical professionals in the Army that these experiences are happening to warriors, and they're afraid to talk about it because they're afraid they're going to lose their security clearance or be deemed psycho and then being thrown in the psych ward with medications, which only exacerbate everything. An NDE is not a medical condition, but they can exacerbate post-traumatic stress, bodily injury, moral injury, etc. Because when a warrior is not believed, I mean, you're stymieing him to what he really needs or she needs is to actually process and integrate the experience. And when you're giving feedback that you don't believe, that soldier shuts down, and he's in fear, and he never has a process to integrate. And what happens is those experiences that happen in the light to them, it's counterintuitive to the training they've actually had, which is to pull the trigger, to assess the situation, and pull the trigger to kill. They come back, they see God, they see an angel, they have a life review, some do, some don't. They see how their actions impacted people that they killed, innocent children or bystanders. They come back, they never want to kill again. There's just dramatic.
Well, when they have those encounters, is it that they're seeing the people that have died kind of in their wake, and that's part of the reveal, that they have to face those moments?
Every near-death experience is different, but the after effects and the characteristics are generally the same. So let me give you an example. The warrior comes back, or a near-death experiencer comes back, and they come back with a great sense of love. They never want to harm anybody. They come back far more generous. They're extremely forgiving and loving. There's a big change in personality. They might have a lot of grief about having to leave the light. They're looking for answers that they can't find. They're confused. They don't want to come back. They just experienced something that was so real to them, and they come back into this body that's broken and shattered, or they can't see, or they lost their limbs. It's devastating. And then they can't meet with anybody who will believe them, so they shut down. And it's
but
just
if there are
exacerbates
so
everything else they're going through.
If there are so many people that are having experiences like this, and the Reverend had supernatural experiences that they even investigated, and the CIA kept a file on him, obviously they're more aware of it. Why don't they treat the veterans with more respect than that? Obviously, it's not just one nut job that's hallucinating. It's multiple people across multiple races, religious lines, and belief systems that are having these experiences. Wouldn't that be something deemed worthy enough to investigate for the military, instead of just rubber stamping them as crazy? Well,
I've spoken to warriors who have not had these experiences, and when they learn that these warriors do have experiences, the warriors who had these experiences, they don't want to go back into battle. And if that's known to a platoon or an outfit that this guy's had a near-death experience and he doesn't want to have your back during a confrontation, they don't want them there in the first place. Now he's alienated in the hospital. He's alienated by the medical staff. He's alienated by his own troops. So they're quiet, and it go in a VA. It's top down. So if the administration does not want the doctors to discuss these spiritual experiences being real, having if they're not believed, the soldier picks that up not to lose his security clearance or deemed unfit, and so he shuts down and he cooperates, because they don't want that advertised. I mean, imagine the rest of your troops thinking this guy's not going to fire a gun because he saw God and he can't shoot the gun anymore. So the thing about it is that veterans have a unique near-death experience. They're physically, psychologically, and emotionally traumatized. Their experiences are exceptional. And they're afraid of being labeled. And they're not being heard or understood. And there's no place for them to get help. Even the chaplains coming in, and I'm not meaning to say this to condemn, but even the chaplains do not accept their experiences as being real, or if they do, they have to be very quiet, because they are following the protocol of how to deal with this warrior who has this spiritual experience. And according to Dr. Corcoran, she has vast more experience in this part. The chaplains sometimes like to influence the soldier to a certain way of thinking, a certain pathway of spirituality. And that kind of pressure is probably doesn't go over very well. What that warrior needs is someone to just listen. That experience is real to the vet. Whether the medical personnel or the clergy or a nurse believes it's real or not, this is about do no harm. This is about do no harm. And the thing about it is when they, self-report is very important. When I go to the doctor and he says, well, how are you doing, Lilia? I say this, and that. He has to get my understanding of what's going on with me by me talking about it. And it has to be part of his tools to diagnose what's going on. But somehow the self-report of being in heaven and seeing an angel, right away they go right to the line of, this is a psychiatrist, this is a psychologist, this is a post-traumatic stress issue. He's hysterical because of the loss of limbs. There's an immediate rush to judgment. And what happens is when the medical professionals, even the general public, are not aware of the characteristics of a near-death experience, nor the after effects of the near-death experiences, how do they separate that from the other symptoms, seeing a leg blown off or he has pain in his chest? How do you extrapolate that? Unless they can understand that there's a set of symptoms or characteristics to look for, how do you get a proper diagnosis? Now, when there's a lot of traumatic brain injuries now in the current conflicts going on. Many of the symptoms and characteristics of traumatic brain injury are very similar to the near-death experience. So the doctor may make a rush that it's a head trauma. And what do they do to do the head trauma? You see a psychiatrist. You go through psychological tests. In the meantime, you're getting medicines and everything else that just exacerbates everything. So in the absence of that training and understanding, they can't make the correct diagnoses. And you can't medicate this. You can't medicate a near-death experience. It's the most profound experience they've ever had. And when they wake up from that experience, depending if it's a hellish or distressing experiences versus a very spiritual, it is life-changing, and it is profound, and it changes them. It changes them very deeply, right to their soul. It's hard for them to be the same person ever again.
Well, now, you said, Reverend, that this didn't happen while you were in service, your near-death experiences.
Yeah, but I had some. Okay, let me explain some of them. I was in Nam, and for example, I tell you who was going to crash and all that kind of stuff. Well, one day I came back, and they assigned me another helicopter because mine was going into maintenance. They said, you're available. You want to fly this one? And I said, yeah, okay. Well, when I went over to the helicopter, the Huey, and I touched the skin of the helicopter, I had this experience. I mean, I saw it, the twisting in the air, the rotor freezing up. I saw it crashing into the canopy, triple canopy of the jungle, on the top of the jungle, tearing itself apart. And I saw all these guys on fire, falling out of the helicopter, and, just a nasty wreck and fire everywhere. And I felt the heat. And I saw that in about 100th of a second. As soon as I touched it, it was like, boom, had the whole story. And so I put a red X in the logbook, meaning it was unflyable, and it needed technicians to check it out because I wasn't going to sign the aircraft out as airworthy. And I went to the commanding officer, and I told him, I said, that thing is going to crash, and it's going to burn tomorrow. Something's wrong with it, the rotor or something. I don't know what it is, but the rotor, I think. And I was told, we'll have technicians check it out. If it checks out okay, you're going to fly out it tomorrow. And I said, no, I don't care what you find. I ain't getting on it, and nobody else will fly on it either. Anyway, they spent all night long looking at this helicopter. They couldn't find anything wrong with it. I was given a direct order to fly on it, and I said, nope, send me on something else. And they were going to court-martial me for not going. I said, okay, no problem. Give me another assignment. I'll face the jury when that time comes. And I went back up to the hooch, our platoon hooch, and there was a new guy there. Algier was his name, from Fair Oaks, California.
And we'll have to stop there to find out what happens next. Stay tuned, folks. We've got more coming your way right here on Midnight in the Desert. We're back. This is Midnight in the Desert. I'm Dave Schrader. Reverend Bill McDonald is with us. And Lilia, is that how I'm saying it properly? Lilia?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Now, just before the break, Reverend McDonald was sharing a story with us, so maybe back it up just about 30 seconds, Reverend, if you wouldn't mind, for people just picking up with us, and give us a run and start back into this so we're all caught up.
All right, this was in 1967 in Vietnam, and I'm in the 128th Assault Helicopter Company. I was a crew chief door gunner, and I had this premonition, or I don't know if it was a premonition, but it was actual vision of this helicopter crashing, burning, killing everybody. And I knew that anybody that got on that helicopter the next day, and not even past the next day, is going to die. And so I refused to fly it. I was told I was going to get a court-martial for disobeying a direct order. I said, okay, no problem. Because I believed this. Not believe, I knew this. There's a difference between believing and knowing. I knew this. This is a fact. I've already seen it in my mind. It's already taking place in a different now. And so when I went back to the hooch, this building we had, if you could call it a building, tin roof, with wire and stuff, to keep the flies out. That's where the flight platoon was staying in Nam. And there was a new guy there, and I was in charge of getting the crews together. The enlisted had been together for the gunners and everything at the time. And so I went up to the new guy and introduced myself. And when I shook his hand, this Alger Durrell, when I shook his hand, I had that same vision again, and I knew he was going to die the next day. And so I gave this big talk. I started crying, and the guy's looking at me like I'm crazy. Guy, it's his first hour in the platoon. He just transferred in from Saigon, where he had one of those cushy computer jobs. Well, back in 1967, a computer job was basically those cards with holes in them, IBM punched cards.
Right.
And he had an air-conditioned office, and he had it made. But he wanted to fight the war, so he volunteered to be a door gunner, right, which is probably one of the most dangerous jobs of the Vietnam War, more casualties probably than any other occupation there. So I looked at him. I told him, I said, you're going to die tomorrow. I said, if you go out flying tomorrow, you're going to die. And first off, he wasn't scheduled to fly anywhere. He didn't have his flight physical, didn't have his helmet, he didn't have any of his equipment. And I told him, I said, whatever you do tomorrow, no matter what they ask you to do, don't get on the aircraft. I think it was aircraft 744. And I said, don't get on it, because if you get on it, you're never going home except in a bag. And then the guy just thought, like, who's this crazy guy? Everybody in my unit thought I was crazy. And I went to sleep and hoping that I was wrong, of course. And I got up the next day early, and I was on a combat mission, and I was taking off, and I saw the helicopter was still there. So I thought, okay, maybe they're not going to get a crew together, and it's not going anywhere. And I came back about 4 o'clock. That was like sunrise. I came back about 4 or 5 at night, and it was gone. And I got angry because I knew at that time that it went out, and it's down. These guys are already dead. I knew it. So I went to the commander's office and said, well, I started yelling at him. I was an E5, right? I go, he's a major. I said, why'd you send those guys out? And he reminded me that he's in charge, not me. And I told him, I said, well, you're just in charge of killing all those guys. I said, where's it at?
Yikes.
So I don't have to answer it. I said, where's it at? And he says, well, it's a couple hours overdue. I said, well, it's a Huey helicopter. It only carries 220 gallons of jet fuel. 2 hours, it's just about empty. So you can't be 2 hours late. You got to be someplace on the ground, right? So they decided to organize a search party, more of a recovery party at that time. And they saw me walking around, and the pilots go, hey, because they figure he's crazy. He knows it's crashed. Maybe he knows where it's crashed, because they didn't know. They said, why don't you come with us? I said, okay. So we get up into the air. We're up about 100 feet or so, and look around the sky. We have no clue where this helicopter is at. It's been out on individual missions all day. And I just pointed out in one direction. I just pointed my finger, and I said, go there. I don't know why. I just said point. And what's crazy is the pilots followed where I pointed. And we flew about 20, 30 minutes, and pretty soon we saw a forest fire in the middle of the jungle. And when we flew over it, circled around it, there was the helicopter all twisted and destroyed, and there was these 8 bodies charred from the jet fuel and everything burned up. nobody live. I volunteered to go down on a rope, but they wouldn't let me go down. And they sent the infantry the next day and found everybody been killed, including, as it turned out, the man I told not to get on it. It seems that morning they had a mission. They needed another helicopter. They couldn't get a crew, and they could only find him there. And so they went with one gun, and on the other side there was no gunner, which is where I would have been sitting, right? And so they went out with just two pilots and a gunner, and then they picked up all these guys. It was just going to be an easy mission and come back. Well, he never came back. He was dead. And so when we came back, everybody was really quiet. The CO, everybody was quiet. And next thing you know, I got the CID, kind of like NCIS,
right?
The Army's version of that. And they sent two guys out, two officers. They put me in this hot tent, canvas tent, on a stool under a 150-watt light and grilled me for 2 days, 8 hours a day.
Wait, so this is like the old dragnets? They've got you underneath the light. They're sweating you for information?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't a good cop, bad cop. It was bad cop, bad cop. It was like, we know you killed all those guys. We just don't know how you did it. Confess up. We'll get you someday, you know. So it was like, so here they are telling the whole world I'm a murderer, right? So it's like, we don't know what caused that helicopter crash, but you find you did something that we're coming after you. You know, we're watching you. Thing is, they didn't say another word. I was left hanging like with the results. It wasn't until that was 1967. It wasn't until 2002, I believe, or 2001, something like that, that one of the guys, one of the officers in my company, went into the records of the unit in the helicopter and looked up that helicopter and found that it had crashed because the rotor had frozen up, and a joint in there froze up, and then when it froze, you know, the helicopter twisted and turned and crashed. So they knew that within 3 weeks of my interrogation, and they never came back to say, geez, we're sorry. It's exactly what you said was wrong with it. And that's was in my file. And then the story of the bullets in the vest, that was in the file, and several other stories. But it was one experience I had in Vietnam that deals with a moral injury or potential moral injury that Lily and I have been working on moral injuries, because we're finding moral and spiritual injuries is a real form of PTSD. It really causes some conflicts. Nowadays in the wars, you know, they see somebody setting off a bomb and they shoot it, and turns out it's a 12-year-old boy that just gave candy to the day before, you know, that kind of stuff. That's a moral injury. But what happened, we were flying. I had a new officer, graduate of West Point, by the book, a major, been stationed his whole career in Germany and headquarters and all. His first tour in Nam. And he wanted us to know that he was in charge. There's only 2 officers and 2 enlisted men on a helicopter, so
right.
Pulling rank on a helicopter is kind of stupid, right? It's like your team, it's family, right? Well, this guy wanted everybody to know he was in charge, and he didn't take any suggestions from anybody, and so that was the way it was. So I said, okay, great. So we're up, and he's flying. You know, normally, if somebody's been in country a while, they realize you fly at the nap of the earth. You fly, you know, right on the grass and up on the tops of the trees, and you're safer, you know, and just zipping along. If you fly up a couple of 200, 300, 400 feet, you're a target. And that's where this guy was at, because he was trying to navigate visually and see things. So he looks down there, and we're in what's called a free fire zone, meaning we didn't have to call into Saigon to get permission to return fire or to fire on somebody. If we thought it was the enemy, we had okay to fire.
Right.
So he looks down there, and on this road, dirt road, he sees what it appeared to be was a column of VC, black pajamas, you know, about 30-something, with a leader in the front, and it looked like they're carrying weapons on their shoulders, you know, look like guns and stuff. And he immediately goes, Mac, called me Mac, you know, McDonald, right? Mac, he says, there's VC marching on the ground. Well, first off, that sounds strange, because I mean, I'm up here in a helicopter, you know, they're still marching, something's wrong, right? But my intuition goes, no, that's not VC. and he tells me to open fire with my M60 machine gun. Now, an M60 machine gun carries 7.62 millimeter rounds, and it fires 750 of them a minute. That's a terror machine, and it can just rip everything apart. So he gave me a direct order. He says, I'm getting direct order, fire on those troops down there. And I refused. I mean, I went to, my hand wouldn't even reach the gun. Wasn't moving.
Right.
I was overcome. And so he says, I'm telling you one more time, give me a direct order, and this is in combat. If you don't do this, I'm going to court-martial you. If you listen to all my stories, I'm almost court-martialed a bunch of times.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like you're a rebel, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a troublemaker. So I refuse, and he says, okay, you come on back. You're facing jail time. You're going to be going into jail. I said, okay, I'll deal with that. So he asked the gunner on the other side. He turned the helicopter around, so the other gunner was facing it, and he asked him to fire, gave him a direct order. And to my surprise, and actually to my worry as well, because he says, I've been flying with Mac for 6 months, and if he says he doesn't feel right about something, I trust his instincts. His intuition is great. I refuse to fire. I'm not. And so I'm going, oh, and then he's told 2 or more people refuse an order. That's mutiny, and we're facing a firing squad or life in jail. I mean, we're like 20, 21 years old, right? Life in jail, Leavenworth. So a normal person would probably cave in at that point and say, well, okay, you're taking the heat, we're just following orders. I'm not that way. And my gunner stood by me, which was very amazing because I knew this was wrong. I knew it wasn't what it appeared to be. And he was totally trusting in me, which is a lot of responsibility. So I finally told the guy, the officer, the major, I said, sir, fly down there next to it. I'll have my gun ready. If they shoot at me, I'll shoot back. Let's see what they are. So he finally goes down. We sweep down right over the top of them. And the first clue is nobody runs, right? And then we look down there, and it turns out it's a Catholic priest with the robes on, black robes. And it's about 30-something children from the local village carrying gardening tools on their shoulders, hoes and rakes and stuff,
right,
to the local garden, vegetable garden. Now, had I followed orders, there would have been 30-something children killed and a Catholic priest. Now, I don't know what church you go to, but that's got to be at least a cardinal sin to kill a priest and children.
Yeah, sure sounds.
That's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So, by my being there, sitting in that seat at that time, I prevented what I consider would have been an atrocity. And, of course, I didn't get no medals for it. I didn't get any recognition for it. Nobody wanted to own up to me, give me these orders. But to me, that was probably the bravest thing I ever saw anybody do was my gunner. Because I was going from a place of knowing. He was going from a place of trust. This whole different thing. But I had things happen over there over and over and over and over again that it was, that's why I got investigated. And they came again and investigated me. They're always investigating me. So there's a story I tell, which I post on my website or on my YouTube channel, that's actually been very popular. It's got 86,000 views on it. It's only been up half a year, I think. And I talk about this experience of seeing ghosts in my helicopter, which is kind of another paranormal, supernormal thing. I guess you normally don't see ghosts. Yeah,
not kind of. That's very paranormal. When you would see them, who was it that you were seeing? Was it the spirits of the men that you were about to lose, or the men that...
Let me give you the whole story. So we go into this LZ. We're the only helicopter within 20 minutes away from this unit. A unit is actually being overrun by Viet Cong, and there's hand-to-hand combat going on, just like you see in the movies, like all these films. The really heavy-duty ones, Platoon, and all that stuff. It was being overrun. So we land in there to pick up wounded. And we got rounds shooting at us. We got explosions underneath us. I get off, and I run across this field and help this medic to load bodies to bring these wounded guys to my helicopter. So I throw a guy on my shoulder, and I'm running as fast as I can. because you don't want to be on the ground too long, right? And then a couple other guys brought some bodies, but I'm running with this guy, and I feel this thump, 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 thump in my back. Well, he's across my shoulders, and I'm getting shot at, and all the rounds are going in this guy's back. So by the time I got him and put him in the helicopter, he was just bleeding all over me. And then we lowered a bunch more guys on there that were alive at the time. But we had taken so many hits, so many rounds. By the time we got out of the LZ and cleared the top of the trees, all 7 or 8 guys that we had on board were just corpses. And I had, we had body parts and guts hanging on the floor and blood pouring out. I mean, it was really, it was a horrific sight. And I'm looking at them, and all of a sudden when I turn around after we get airborne and we're moving a little bit and they're all dead, I'm seeing these 7 or 8 guys sitting up looking at me. It's like, what do we do? Help us. Like, what's going on? Total confusion.
Could they see each other?
Yeah. It was like, I'm seeing them, they're seeing me, they're seeing each other. And it was so sad. It was a sadness. I mean, because they died in a violent way, number one. Number two, right. They didn't get a chance to make peace with anything. They didn't understand what was going on. And so I prayed for them, and silently, and I prayed for them, and I gave them my empathy and sympathy, and I gave them my love. And so we landed, by the time we just landed about 15, 20 minutes away, and there was a group there to take them off and put them in bags and ship them off. Most of them, about half of them were gone. I could tell they've already detached, and they were gone. They were good. But there was a couple that were still hanging around the bag, plastic bag. So that type of thing, I posted that video, and the remarks and comments I got from veterans, all kinds of people duplicated that experience from their time in Nam, where on the field or in a helicopter or in a hospital or something. So it wasn't just me seeing that. There was lots of people seeing that. And people started coming to me with their stories. It's like I got a bunch of stories together after I had my about 5th or 6th heart attack. I had all this information on all these guys. I had about 30 guys for stories. In fact, the guy that's coming up after us that you have on the last hour, he did a book on World War I. Well, I helped formulate this book from George Washington, which actually has a great story that Lily can talk about, but from George Washington time all the way up to Vietnam and the present war, that soldiers throughout our history have had all these experiences. But I knew several dozen guys personally, and then I got a call. Here's how these things work. I just came out of the hospital. I just had some stents, 3 or 4 stents put in at the time, and I didn't have the energy to write that book, but I knew this book had to be written. And I got contacted by this guy from Simon & Schuster, and they had contracted an author, a really good author, professional, to write a book like that called God in the Trenches, or God in the Foxhole. And they wanted to use my story. They heard about my story. Well, I said, well, so I talked to the author, and I said, well, how many stories you got? And he says, well, I got yours. he says, I've got this money in advance. I don't have any stories. And I said, I tell you what, these stories are important. These are people I know. They're important. I said, I will give you the contact information and a couple paragraphs on what each story is about. And it's World War II, it's Korea, it's Vietnam, it's present war. It spreads, it's all, right? I said, I will give you that. He says, well, you realize I'm making money on this. I'm not going to. I said, I don't want nothing. In fact, I'll even write the foreword for your book, which I did. And the guy was just blown away that I gave him all my work. Because to me, it wasn't about the money, and it wasn't about the fame. It was saving these soldiers' stories. And one of the World War II guys, Haig Kopachin, who was a bombardier, navigator, and all that stuff during World War II, he had some fantastic stories. He got it published in that book, and he was interviewed by local magazines and stuff in Sacramento. And then he died of just not that long afterwards, but he felt like, wow, I saved my stories. There they are. They're published, and he was so happy. So that was what I was trying to create. Was these guys were sharing their stories, and also that book, God in the Foxhole. Foxhole is it's a testimony that these things are real and they happen. And anyway, it's so that's kind of what I dealt with in Nam. And when I came back, and I'm fortunate enough to meet people like Lilia, who's been out there, and Diane, who couldn't be on your show tonight. They have been empathetic and sympathetic beyond measure, reaching out to help people. And they contacted me this year to help them out because I was doing my own thing. And so that's kind of where we're at. And Lily will attest. She might want to say something about George Washington because she told me that story, and I thought that's really a neat story because that shows this is not a new phenomena.
Right.
Miracles on the battlefield. It goes back to Pennsylvania, right, Lilia?
Yeah, I mean, these experiences have been happening to warriors ever since the beginning of time. You can go back to the Bible. And here's the situation. After I was telling you I was doing a 4-month study of near-death experiences, the very last experience I decided to watch, I love veterans and always have. And here Tony Woody comes up. He's a flight engineer, and he was telling about his experience he had, a near-death experience with his plane going down. And it prompted a spiritually transformative experience. It was so overpowering and overwhelming him. And he had nobody to talk to because he didn't want to lose his security clearance. He went to church, and he tried to tell them in the church setting. He went up to a pastor that was taking over for his pastor. He walked up. He told him the whole story. You know what this clergyman did? He turned away from Tony and walked away. He didn't respond. He said nothing. That devastated Tony. Absolutely devastated him. He felt like he got kicked out of heaven, and then he got kicked out of the church. And he was devastated. And he went back to another church the following Sunday. One of the military people came over to him and said, "Man, if I were you, I'd never say that again. I'd never tell your story again. You're going to get kicked out." Now he's abandoned by everybody. So then it started an alcohol problem. His marriage went bad. This went on for years and years. He just became a bad boy because he figured God kicked him out of heaven. And then he just sort of decided to do something different with his life after everything was going into the toilet. And he started studying, and he studied everything. And I happened to turn on his show, which was like an hour and a half. And I was done listening to stories, but let me tell you, something reminded me, when I was looking at him, he looked familiar to me. I don't know why. And but I was done listening to him talk about his plane in the beginning, so I got up and I audibly heard in the ethers, "Sit down." There was nobody else in the restaurant but me, except one waitress. Oh, okay, I sat down. I started watching more. Within 5 minutes, I got bored. I heard again, "Sit down." Well, within 3 or 4 minutes, Tony said, "I have been looking for my answers to my experiences in life for 30 years, and I still haven't found them." And when he said that, this sun inside my heart just went off, and I knew I had to contact him because I knew where he can find his answers. They're the same place I found my answers to my experiences in the light. So I contacted him, and I found him, and I sent him the set of books. And he called me back, and he said, "I found my answers to the light." And to this day, he tells warriors all over the place, all over the world, where he found his answers. He's a very profound individual, and he can be found on YouTube and everywhere. He's a rock star everywhere. And he talks about the after effects that warriors go through, because there's a lot of shame, guilt, fear, people intimidated by other people. They're afraid to speak the truth. And he goes out there as an advocate, and he has no fear about where he found his answers. And he found them in the St. Germain series. That is where people will find out their answers to their experiences in the light. And I'm very proud of him. And Bill, I have total admiration for. His books are blow you away awesome. You can walk right through his experiences. In his books, he takes you right with him. It makes my heart just
that's awesome.
become so welled up with compassion and care for these veterans.
We have to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll continue this discussion on our journey. We also have a few phone calls coming in. And if you have questions for our guests, you can give us a call, 520-600-6483. We've got more right after this. We're back. This is Midnight in the Desert. I'm Dave Schrader, your host, and our guests for this next hour remain Reverend Bill McDonald and Lilia. Later on in the show, we're going to go to the Angels in the Trenches. Right now, we're talking about military near-death experiences. And with your permission, we have a few calls. Do you guys mind if we grab some of these calls?
Sure.
Let them ask. Let them rip.
All right. First, feel free to call in, folks, 520-600-6483. That's 520-600-MITD. Give us a call. You can also email me at dave@midnightinthedesert.com, or you can connect with me through the wormhole if you're one of our subscribers. First up, it appears to be Daniel from Sarasota, Florida. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hi. Good to be here.
Thank you for calling in. What did you want to ask or share with us this evening?
Yeah, I was wondering maybe what role training and things like boot camp and the culture plays in the military that kind of creates this gap of care, maybe.
Okay, I can handle that. First off, you got to realize that all boot camp, basic training, whether it's the Navy, the Marines, the Army, the Air Force, first thing they got to do is break you down for being a civilian. And the old way was, it's changed, but it used to be pretty brutal. But you take people that have basically followed all the rules of the road and thou shalt not kill and the 10 Commandments, and all of a sudden you're telling them, no, this is what you're supposed to do. You're a trained machine. You're supposed to go out there and do this without thinking about it. You follow orders. So you're setting up people for conflicts later on, emotionally and spiritually. I was kind of different because I went into the military with a pretty heavy background in metaphysics. I was into yoga meditation. I've been meditating since I was 3 years old. I had experiences. I felt protected. I felt there was somebody looking after me, and obviously there was. But the normal guy going into the military, basic is a shock. It's a beyond just a cultural shock. I mean, it's.
I missed that. Could you say?
It's beyond just culture. But I was Syria was listening in on this, trying to answer my question.
Obviously, right.
I couldn't believe that. So it's more of, honestly, it's more of society how they treat warriors when they come back from the war. That's a bigger problem than the pre-war treatment. Right. The military indoctrination, all that. It's when I came back from Vietnam, there was no mercy. I mean, it was. You've heard the stories, you've seen the stuff. We were not welcome. Even our families, people didn't appreciate it. And this brings up a subject that I talk about to veterans, because when I came many years ago, because I have these things I wanted to do with people, and I lecture and I do things. And I said, geez, I want to connect with this new age group, because and the new age group going, you're a warrior, man. We don't want you. It's like, if you're a warrior, it's like tainted goods. Like, how could you be a spiritual person, a spiritual warrior, and you've been in a war? And they miss the whole thing, because the history of the world has always been about spiritual warriors, whether it's in the Bhagavad Gita and everything, when they talk about that great battle, and Krishna tells Arjuna, his disciple, that he has to go fight against his brothers, right, in that war. And then you got St. Francis of Assisi. He was a POW fighting the Arabs in the Middle East, and he came home, and then he had to deal with his own form of PTSD, and then you had the likes of the founder of the Jesuits, and he came back, and he was wounded, and so that was St. Ignatius of Loyola, and even Mahatma Gandhi was a sergeant major in the British Army in South Africa. even though he was a hospital corps, he wore the uniform, and he did his duty. So there's a long history of the warrior spirit transcending this image that New Agers have. Some people get it. I know Paramahansa Yogananda, that started the Self-Realization Fellowship, he was very supportive of the troops in World War II. He told them it was their duty. They didn't let their monks and their followers get out of their military duty. They said it was their duty, it was their dharma. You know, you live in a country, you have a duty to that country. And the whole thing is, you go to war, it's not about what you do so much as your intentions behind what you do. In other words, you send a guy into battle and the guy's a racist, he hates the other people, he hates their religion, he just wants to kill them. That's a whole different thing than a guy going into battle and he's there to protect his brother. If he doesn't fight, then one of his guys is going to get killed. And he shoots the other guy, not because there's any joy in it, but it's his duty and he has to save lives on this end. So, yeah, intentions are everything. And to make that clear, it's like if you have a doctor and he makes an honest error, he does something, he hiccups or something, and actually cuts somebody's artery and the guy dies, the guy's dead. He killed him, right? If the guy's drunk when he goes in there, or he's on drugs and he makes a mistake, well, he still killed the guy, but it's a different level, right? It's like a cop. The cop shoots somebody, thou shalt not kill, but the cop killed somebody that was trying to kill somebody else, a hostage, right? Or he fired back as somebody was firing at him, versus a guy goes in a grocery store and just shoots everybody down. So it's your intentions going into battle, whatever your battle be, on a real battlefield or on the battlefield of life. Your intentions that you hold in your heart, if you have love for others and you see God in everybody else, that changes the energy of what you're doing. It changes it. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think, well, it's warriors kill. Yeah, you know, it's beyond that simple answer. There's true warrior spirits out there that are very spiritual and have been. There's a history of them. So I salute to my fellow veterans out there that, you know, they're treated like they're second-class spiritual citizens at times. Like, you know, well, you went out there. No. If they did their duty with their intentions to doing their duty for their country and for their... And in all honesty, most people in combat don't fight for the flag. They don't even fight for the country. They don't fight for some great ideal. They fight to save their buddies. That's where it's really at. So I don't know if that answered your question, Danny.
Danny,
yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for calling in, Danny, and being a part of the show. We appreciate that. All right, we've got another call. This looks like it's Donna that's calling in. Donna, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate knowing about your program, Dave.
Well, thank you for tuning in and being a part of it.
I myself am a talk show host, and I'm calling in support of Lilia and Reverend Bill, because I just shared his story on my program just within the last hour. And I think both of them are doing a superb job of communicating about the real-life experiences that people go through. And personally, I, as a professional counselor and minister, and being involved in the work of mind for most of my life, I can tell you these experiences, when people can share them, it's very liberating for them. And I think it's great that you're giving a platform that is what I would call a safe platform that enables them to realize that this is not something to be intimidated by. It is something that's meant to empower the individual to realize about the richness of the gift of life, and also that they are special and that they have something to give to other people because of what they've gone through.
Amen. That's a beautiful way of putting it.
Well, Don, it was a pleasure being on your show, and thank you for calling in. I don't know if I can add anything to that.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, and me and Lily want to thank you, because you have been very generous with giving a voice to veterans' issues. on your radio show, at least a day a week. You got some kind of veteran stuff on there, and that is appreciated, because I know coming from you that it's genuine. It's not just doing it just because it's, whatever. It's genuine empathy, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, and the fact that you're a civilian, Donna, and you're very, very compassionate towards the military. I love your radio show about the military.
Thank you. That's Warriors for Peace that is featured, and I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to be able to comment on this, because the subject matter so often is hidden. And having a relative in my own family that served in World War II, he's in his middle 90s now, and the experiences that he had with out of body, and as well as being told that he was going to survive the battle in Italy, where him and two others were the only survivors out of 300, and he was told that he would survive the battle. They were in caves in mountains in Italy fighting the Germans, and to listen to his story, I'm one of the few people that told this to, and I just really appreciate that, because I think it's important to share. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for doing what you do to make sure that the military stays in the forefront as well. And we here on the show are big supporters, as I said at the start of the show. We, my family's been a part of the military, hearing the stories and the plight. Just know, Reverend Bill, that, that may have been the reaction at the time. People were, I think, deluded and it was a very confusing time, and people didn't know how to feel at the moment. But I think that, from my estimation, it looks as though they've come around quite a bit on the Vietnam veterans and realized that you were doing a job that you were required to do and put into. And it's kind of a different situation. But thank you very much for serving and being a part of that as well. I know that couldn't have been easy for anybody.
No, I tell you what, it was hard on my brothers that came back. And there was no apparatus out there. I became, before PTSD was labeled PTSD, just crazy vets coming home, I started helping people when I got out of the military in 1968, 69. So I've been going at this unofficially and officially for the whole time. And in the beginning, it was just Vietnam vets helping Vietnam vets. That's why you always wonder why when a Vietnam vet meets another vet, they always say, "Welcome home, brother." You ever hear vets say that, "Welcome home"?
Yes, I have.
Because we welcomed ourselves home. There was nobody else. It was us. So we said to hell with it. That's our battle cry, "Welcome home." And the guys get it. The other vets get it. People listening out there that are vets, they know what I'm talking about. So it's a welcome home. It's a brotherhood. And now, in the modern times, it's a sisterhood as well. I helped this beautiful lady write a book, Band of Sisters. Great book, by the way. So there's some women out there that are doing things too. So the military is changed. It's only 1% or less of the population. It's a very small group that's paying the burden and the price for everybody, and it's not evenly distributed. That's why nobody's jumping up and down about the present wars. Nobody's protesting because they don't have to face a draft, right? They don't have to go. Let somebody else's son go or daughter. So times have changed. I never got bitter, right. And Lily will attest to this. I never got shook up by any of this stuff. But just because I handled it doesn't mean that others did or were able to. So I take my strength. And I try to help my brothers and sisters out there. Now I'm working with all people from all the wars. And Lily has been a huge help to me this year. I mean, my gosh, she's done so much for promoting what I'm trying to do this year. She got me into the IANS conference where I got to do a free workshop for veterans and keynote speech, and we've been sharing stuff. And now Lily and I and Diana and some other people, we're looking at making an organization that's independent, so we don't have to account to a board and everybody else, but someplace where we can just really just help vets, and not just near-death experiences, but also spiritual experiences like I have friends that had angels on the battlefield, and that's true. This happens. And then one weird story, if you got time for a story here.
I do, and then we've got a caller to share in one as well.
Okay. Lieutenant Colonel now, when he retired, I don't know what rank he was an officer of some kind, but he was out in the battlefield of Vietnam. He was out on a night patrol, and they went out on this patrol with a handful of guys, and it just happened to be a full moon that night, and they realized when the moon came up that it was like everything was lit up, right? So they're out there in this field, and all of a sudden this moon is shining and the clouds come away, and they looked and they could see a squad or two of VC coming right at them, walking down the trail, smoking cigarettes. They could see the lit ends of the cigarettes, talking, and so they freeze. They just freeze, and he crouches down, and while he's freezed, sitting down, kind of crouched down, and they're coming right at him, all of a sudden he looks up and he sees his mother in front of him praying for his safety. And he just, what? And so the guys come right up next to him, and they're like, he tells me the story, it's like literally an inch or two from his body. They walk right by him, every one of them, without touching him. And nobody sees him. I mean, he's broad daylight. He can see them totally clear. They don't see him, right? So they get back. A few days later, whatever amount of time it takes to get mail from whatever state it was, Indiana or someplace, to Vietnam, he opens up a letter, and it's from his mother saying she prayed for him. At that time, when he looked at the time difference, she was praying for him when that happened. And then he realized that she was praying there on the battlefield with him, out there. And so this man is he's a bright, intelligent man, college educated. The guy tells me the story. I got to believe it. It's right there. And then I had a story from a guy who was in the 9th Infantry Division, a friend of mine, a fellow meditator, Sacramento, and he was in a dry rice paddy, which means there was no water in it, but it was dry season. And all of a sudden, a machine gun opens up on him, automatic fire, all kinds of rounds coming at him, and they got no place to hide. It's just a big open field. And he goes, "Oh my God, help me!" And boom, he finds himself transported about 100 or 200 feet away behind a tree. And then he looks at himself, how'd I get here, right? And his first thought was for his friend. I can't remember his friend's name. It's Leroy or something, right? So he goes, "Oh, God, help Leroy." And boom, his friend is standing behind that tree with him, totally confused. But they were out of the line of fire instantaneously. Now, how do you explain something like that, right? That these are the things that are just
no clue.
They're not just happenstance or by an accident. No, these things are like boom, he's transported. He knows he's there. He was getting fired at, and then he's over there. When he was in danger, and he cried out to God, he was transported immediately, him and his friend, away from the battle scene. So that's one of those stories of Sin, God, and the Foxhole, by the way. But it's like these things are so common, and the fact that I've opened up and shared these on my videos, on my YouTube channel, and in my books, it's opened up an avenue for people to keep giving me more stories. I hear stories every week. Just like Lilia, awesome. You hear stories all the time, right? So...
well, we've got, you know what, speaking of stories, we've got one. Tony is calling in right
Tony.
now. Yep, Tony's got a near-death experience. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for calling in. Sure.
We know that voice.
Okay. Welcome to the show,
Bill?
Tony.
I met Bill
That's
last,
the famous Tony.
August. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're coming through.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I met Bill last August in Labor Day weekend at the IONS conference in Philadelphia recently, and we worked together to help veterans. And we just kind of met through Lilia over, I think, a couple of years ago we talked, and then we first met for the first time, Bill, is that right? Just this past August we first met?
Yeah, Lily kind of introduces everybody to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, she sure does. She's awesome. She introduced me to my answer, too. And I had been seeking for my answers on what happened to me for decades. And it affected me profoundly. Just kind of give everybody out there in the radio world a little idea who I am. I served 22 years in the Navy. If you Google the airplane P3 Orion, so you can get a feel for what the aircraft looked like, I was a flight engineer for over 20 years on a 70-ton, 4-engine, heavyweight turboprop aircraft called a P3 Orion. I've got over 10,000 flight hours, and at one point, the plane's primary mission during the Cold War was tracking submarines. So I did a lot of that, but the platform aircraft did a lot of different missions depending on what it was configured for electronically. So at one point, I was had reached the level in my career where I was the senior instructor, flight engineer, and model manager for the electronic surveillance and reconnaissance, basically spy plane aircraft fleet for the Navy. So you have to have a top secret clearance to walk in these airplanes, much less fly on them. And so that's the kind of work I did. And back in 1982, when I was had a little over 3,000 hours of flight experience already, we're doing a flight called for the Rim Pack exercises, Rim of the Pacific. It's a big military exercise, and it was my crew's turn to go do this mission. I was stationed in Barbers Point, Hawaii, and we took off to go fly our mission, and about 10,000 feet on climb out, we had a malfunction on one of the engines, so we had to shut it down. Well, we were really heavy because we had a lot of fuel. We were going out for a 12, 13-hour mission. So we called it being bagged out. You had all the fuel you could take, the heaviest weight you could take off at. And so we had to dump fuel and then fly around for a while and burn down fuel to get to our max allowable land weight so we didn't damage the airplane, because you can structurally damage one, right? And so we came back and declared an emergency. When you do that, they've set the fire trucks right on the side of the road, of the runway, so that as you go by, you have two stations here about 2,003 feet down the runway and a few thousand feet, another two on each side. And they do that. There's like usually about 6 fire trucks out there waiting for you. And that's a good thing usually. That's what you really want most of the time. But that day it wasn't a good thing. And we landed on the left runway. It was parallel runways. We landed on 040 left. That was the heading. And coming in from over the ocean. And when we touched down, everything was okay with the main mounts when they touched down, the main wheels. Almost as soon as the nose gear came down, we immediately departed the runway to the right. We're doing 135 knots. That's a little over 155 miles an hour. When things go wrong at those speeds, they go wrong in a hurry. And I kept thinking he was going to correct the heading of the plane and get us back on center line with the rudder, but he never did. And what turned out, he used incorrect rudder, thinking he was putting in proper rudder, and he just made it worse. And at those speeds, you leave the runway, it happens in a hurry. And so all of a sudden, I've got this fire truck coming right at me. And I knew from the angle and the speed that I was dead. There was no way we were going to get out of it. I still had 42,000 pounds of fuel on board. If we even nicked that wing on that fire truck as we went by, it was going to blow everything to pieces. Ooh. And I knew it. There was no way out. And I had death coming at me at 155 miles an hour, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. And in that moment of just visceral, raw terror, all of a sudden I'm out of the airplane. But I'm still in my chair doing my job, too. Okay. You know, I wasn't drunk. I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't unconscious. I wasn't out of oxygen. I'm in the center seat, flight engineer seat of a 70-ton airplane doing my job on landing when it happened to me, okay? And the next thing I know, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm totally confused. I don't understand what's going on. I'm an engineer, and I'm trying to figure it out as best I can, and there's no way. And all kinds of other weird things happened in that period. I'm not going to go through all that because we don't have time. But we ended up barely missing.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got less than 30 seconds left, so why don't we take a quick break? We'll continue. You tell us what happened after you were kind of bilocating in that situation. We've got a lot more to discuss. Stay tuned, folks. And remember to go check out our website, midnightinthedesert.com. You can click on our guest's name for more information about them, their books, their projects, their websites, and the links so that you can keep in touch and find out more about them. Stay tuned. We've got more coming your way. I'm Dave Schrader. This is Midnight in the Desert. Reverend Bill McDonald, our guest, along with Lilia, and tonight we're talking about military near-death experiences and so much more. On the line, we have Tony, who's calling in, talking about a near-death experience of his own, and you were just walking us through this moment where it sounds like bilocated. Your consciousness was outside of your physical form, which was still in the plane doing its job, but there was a separation kind of between soul and form. Is that right?
I assume that's what happened. That's what it felt like. And in that moment, I could see the propeller on the number 4 engine gap the front left corner of the fire truck and barely missed it. I was like right there an inch away watching that. How could I do that? And so after that, we barely missed the fire truck, ended up going all the way across the asphalt between the 2 runways and ended half on, half off the other runway, and literally rolled out on the other runway to finish the landing, a different runway. I used 2 entirely different runways one day to make an emergency landing. Oof. And then a few days later, I was watching a television show and saw something that I thought was a miracle, my first miracle I watched. I now know everything's a miracle. Back then I was 25 years old or so and didn't know what a miracle really was. But I'm thinking I'm seeing my first miracle, and that night I said a simple prayer of genuine gratitude. This happened 2 days, it was a Monday was the incident, and then on Wednesday was when it happened. The TV show was called That's Incredible. And I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. 2 days later, I say a simple prayer that night of genuine gratitude, really, of just grateful that I was able to see my first miracle on television. And that night, I said a simple prayer, and at the end of it, I added the words, and Lord, it'd be nice if you could do something like that for me someday. You know, you don't really think anything's going to happen, right? But that night it did, and the next thing I know, in the middle of the night, just all of a sudden I'm in a black void with this liquid, molten, golden white light that's gracefully moving in all directions, and it's expressing pure, unconditional love everywhere, and it's exploding through me. And I said 3 words. I said, "Oh my goodness." I was just dumbfounded by what I was seeing, hearing, and feeling. Feeling, too. The energy was expressing the love, and I was enfolded in it. I was one with it. And as that was happening, I started seeing things in the room through my peripheral vision and didn't realize that I was actually in bed and had sat up and had my arms outstretched and wanted to go to the light. That's all I wanted, was to be in the light. And so when it was over, it just kind of went away, and I sat there and just cried the rest of the night until the sun came up, because I just lost the greatest love I'll ever know. And then I went to church the following Sunday. I needed answers. I needed to know what happened to me. And I didn't get answers. The pastor just kind of looked at me and turned his back on me and walked off like I was crazy, I guess. I don't know what he thought. But and then I had, even my own wife at the time was trying to get me to shut up. Everybody I was talking to was telling me, don't talk about this. So I didn't. I needed help, and I didn't get any. And I turned around and walked off, and just for the next 20 years, my life was basically turned into a wreck because I needed spiritual help and guidance and assistance, and I didn't get any. And that caused alcohol drinking problems, a lost marriage. It just wrecked a lot of things in my life because I just didn't get the answer. People turned their backs on me in the beginning, and I got stigmatized rather than helped. And if they just validated what I was saying instead of telling me, no, you can't do this, you can't say that, that would have been a big difference for me to help me get my foot on the get more stabilized about trying to understand what happened to me. But that didn't happen, and that caused so much trouble in my life. And so after years of learning and everything, I got to a certain point where I was kind of stuck and wasn't really getting answers. And then Lilia learned about me, and she called me up or emailed me or something, and then we ended up talking. And I finally got my answers through the St. Germain Foundation, because when I was in the light, it was all about love and energy. And I knew that over the years I had to start learning about energy and what all of it meant and how it's connected to us spiritually in our hearts and all of that. And nowhere did I ever get the actual answer that I knew was the truth in my heart, because I experienced perfection. I experienced perfect love, perfect goodness, perfect everything there. I had no needs, no wants. I was completely content forever. And it was forever. There was no time there at all. I don't know how to explain to anybody what a place of timeless time and spaceless space looks and feels like while you're looking at the most beautiful thing in existence. It's really, really hard to explain. And
no, I get that.
If it hadn't been for Lilia, I don't know where I would be today. But she brought me those books, and I have, after decades of seeking, I'm now studying, and I don't seek anymore. I've got my answers, and I know what I'm doing now. And I know
That's
how
awesome.
to manifest into this world and things like that. And things are still happening today. I had a massage therapist was working on me a couple of years ago, and I started telling her about these books. And when I came to the part in the book that said the very phrase that I just described earlier, and a couple of others that expressed it in a manner that I'd never seen before, they called the light the liquid, molten, golden white light. I'd never seen those words put together in one sentence. It called it the love star. I knew that was true, too. And it talked about the great, great silence. And when I was there, I call it God's perfect meditation room. There's no sound whatsoever. None. Here, everybody, I'm meditating. It's perfectly quiet here. No, it isn't. You can still hear your heartbeat. You can hear your breath going in and out. There in that meditation room, there are no disturbances or discord of any kind. Any kind.
So I'd like to make a point. And thank you, Tony, for sharing.
Yeah, thank you,
story.
Tony.
And what I'd like to just say to the people, that the gap of care is 100% preventable. It never has to happen. It's just about the medical doctors, even the general public, opening their heart and listening to a veteran talk about his experience and know that experience is real to that vet. That's what it takes. 3 simple things: validation, education, and support. And that is what these warriors will get if they pick up those books of the St. Germain series, volumes 1 through 3. And they will get validated, educated, and supported. I also will tell you, please, warriors out there or caretakers of them, go to Dr. Diane Corcoran's website at corcoranconsulting-nde.com. And she has training manuals. She has training materials for medical doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists. There's also videos there that warriors can visit about warriors talking about their own experiences in the light. And the parents of warriors who've lost their children, please visit helpingparentsheal.org. And that is a group that will help you heal after you've lost your children to war. And Tony, I'm very grateful to you. I thank you for going out there and telling warriors the truth about where they can find their answers. And Bill McDonald has an exceptional Spiritual Warrior Ministry. He provides free services to veterans all over the world. And also he has the largest writing society for warriors where they can tell their story, because telling their story is what gets them out of the gap of care. Someone listens, someone validated, they get their education and they get their support. That's the simple equation that needs to be followed.
Agreed. Thank you so much for bringing that up. We do have one more caller. We'll try to work in here before the end of the show, and it looks like it is Jim. Let me see if I can get you. Jim, are you there with us?
I'm here, yes.
All right, Jim, welcome to the show. What did you want to share with us?
Well, I do a radio show, Veterans Talk, The Forgotten Promise, out of Las Vegas for the last 10 years, and have been interested in what you folks talk about. I know a lot of our veterans don't realize what they're feeling and going through, and when they do go for help, if they can get somebody to listen, a lot of times the people aren't trained to really know what they're listening to. It's really a problem. I think our veterans need a lot more support and understanding on their feelings and the things they experience.
Amen to that. That this whole thing is like Lilia says in the beginning here. It's an educational process, but instead of us trying to change organizations, which we have little control over, we're developing our own. So there'll be resources online and in books and through workshops and YouTube videos. We're going to develop our own help so people can go on their own and find help. And because otherwise you got to go to the VA, you go through these organizations. Organizations have their boxes they're in, and this is not comfortable for them. This is not a box they're in.
I can tell you an organization that you can go to, the Warriors, IANDS.org, IANDS.org, and they have a veteran near-death. Dr. Diane Corcoran has the Vet NDE project, and she is the president of IANDS, and you can also visit IANDS.org. They were the first in the world, anywhere, to ever hold a near-death experience workshop for veterans, and they had the courage to bring in Reverend Bill McDonald to come to their conference in Philadelphia in 2019, and it's the first ever in the world, and it was very, 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 very successful.
And we didn't charge anybody for that workshop was free.
All right, Jim. Thank you. Go ahead, Jim.
You're
finish
welcome.
Up.
Happy to be a part of it, and of course, anytime that we can participate and help in any of your events and what you do, please let us know out there. Again, we are Veterans Talk, The Forgotten Promise, out of Las Vegas.
Okay, I'll tell you what. My email is listed someplace on the site for this radio show and my website. Contact me, and we'll coordinate something with you.
All right. Thank you, Jim. The information, again, is over at midnightinthedesert.com. Click on our guest's name, and you'll find the info there. We've only got a handful of minutes left together here, so we'll try to keep it caller-free for the remainder of this segment together so that you two can share your information. Obviously, it's important that these veterans, the people that are out doing the hard work, the very few that actually step up to do this, have support and education afterwards for these type of experiences, because it shouldn't be overlooked, it shouldn't be forgotten, and it is, as you said, Lilia, it's very real and it's very impactful to them. Have you worked much with Dr. Raymond Moody or spoken to him? I know that he works with a lot of veterans with PTSD and helping them in a spiritual way to confront these elements and help free themselves of this.
No, I haven't worked with Raymond Moody. I've exclusively worked with Dr. Corcoran on the Vet NDE project. I go, and I am an NDE educator. I go around the world by email, and I educate every country, English-speaking country right now. And it doesn't matter to me where the warrior comes from. It does not matter. It doesn't matter to Bill or IANDS. We are there to give them the education, validation, and support that they need. And I never want another soldier to go through what Tony Woody. He is the poster boy for what happens to a vet when they go through a gap of care. That should never happen, and we're going to do everything we can that when a warrior, while he's even in active duty, is interested or curious about his experience, or somebody who's had one and he's a veteran, they can come and visit a website and get their answers right now, and end the suffering. Like I said, it's 100% preventable. Ian should be congratulated. Dr. Diane Corcoran is the pioneer in this, and we love our warriors. And I often hear the soldier will tell me, you know, Lilia, people say thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. You know, I know it goes so much down deep for what they have to go through, but we really do love our warriors. You guys are our heroes. And there's a lot of compassionate hearts out there. If you haven't told your story, find somebody who will listen. Call Dr. Diane Corcoran, call Reverend Bill, call me, talk to us, and let us help you.
Agreed. Now, if there are veterans out there right now that are really having a hard time and are feeling kind of broken, feeling lost and alone out there, are there some things that they can do right now from the privacy of their own home to start trying to come to grips with this, or is this something that needs to be done in a counseling type way?
Well, I'll tell you what. Go ahead, Lily. I was going to tell them about Miracles in the Foxhole, the conference workshop booklet, the reference material we have. It has
go ahead.
My material, your material, Dr. Cochran's. We got a 95-page ebook out there. It's only 99 cents. They can download it on off of Amazon on ebooks there. So I just throwing that out there.
All right, thank you. And
so
Lilia?
What I would tell them is I would ask them to try to talk to us, or I would tell them also to try to find this I Am instruction. It teaches humanity where God abides, where the power of God is, how to use that power and what humanity is supposed to do with it. You will find your answers there, I promise you. I found mine, and Tony found his. Every warrior who has ever found these books found their answers there. It's just an education. It's just an education that will help validate you and help support you and educate you. There's also, I want to mention, I'm very, very impressed with the Cohen Veteran Network. Pete Freudenberger, who works for that network at the clinic there, they treat vets post 9/11, and they come there for free to get psychological services. And it doesn't matter if it's their parents, their stepchildren, the grandparents, the caretakers, the warrior. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if you're honorably discharged. You could have served one day. Call them up. Get their help. They understand the near-death experience, so they're an additional resource for you. Another resource, there was a book written by warriors in their own words about their experiences in the light while they were in combat. And you can go to lightstories.org, and the book is called Beyond the Explosion, Stories of the Light. And that is a book with warriors writing in their own words, their own self-report. Not one word was changed. It's a profound book, lightstories.org. I thank you for letting me talk about this.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you very much. Now, if you wouldn't mind, Bill, before we wrap up with you, I mean, you had a total of how many near-death experiences?
Well, I've had 3, but I've had a dozen serious heart attacks and probably 25 more that were not so serious.
My God, you are an overachiever.
I got 8 stents because I can't fit anymore. I got quadruple bypass surgery. I got it's just the body, and it is what it is. But my time here keeps getting extended. I get a break. I can't get out of this place. I'm drafted, I think. There's a lot of work to do, and we're out there in the trenches, literally in the trenches, and this has turned out to be an area that we don't have to fight off other people. I mean, it's not like we're doing something that everybody wants to do. This is kind of like an area we're kind of like, Diane was a pioneer in this, and Lilia, and the rest of us are there's only a handful of us that are really working on this. And so hoping this show awakens the curiosity, if nothing else, of people out there that want to get involved, and they contact either Lilia or me or Diane or one of our websites or whatever. There's ways to contact us. We're always looking for people that want to get involved, and I go around the country and I do free workshops for veterans and the families, because as Lilia talked to, it's like when you're dealing with a veteran, it affects the whole group. Somebody's got problems from combat, be it PTSD, near-death experiences, spiritual transforming experiences, moral, spiritual injuries, whatever it is, it affects the whole family unit when they come back. So
yeah, you're talking about the psychosocial dynamics.
Yeah.
The impact
so
goes out to the
whole
family. So another good resource is IANS has produced 2 films, What Medical Professionals Need to Know About Near-Death Experience. The second is closest to my heart, is Understanding the Near-Death Experiences of Veterans. It's a 36-minute training video. It's for anybody, and it will explain everything that a vet goes through, what you can do to help them. And it's a profound, it was produced by Roberta Moore of Blue Marble Productions. Another thing, no one has to make any guesswork about how to help near-death experiencers, especially veterans. There's a ready, set, go training, manual, and package, educational packet that was created. And Dr. Diane will go and visit any location, even if it's in a different part of the world, and educate medical communities all over and train them on this educational training packet. And we can stop the suffering of veterans right now. And I'm asking everybody, whether you help a near-death experiencer, a warrior, just help a warrior. Go out there. The power of one person like me, who is now going all over the world and trying to raise awareness even for the warriors in the IM Invictus Games in England. And if anybody knows Prince Harry, tell him who I am. I'd like to let him know that this is happening to soldiers all over the world. Please put your heart out there for a veteran and their family. Even if you're a civilian, just go out and love those veterans.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much again for the work that you are doing. And I hope that there are veterans out there listening right now or listening via the podcast that now realize that that gap has been closed a little more, that there is an answer and that they can get help. They're not alone in the experiences that they've had. And thankfully, we're in a different era now where coming forward with these kind of stories is not taboo. People are not going to automatically jump to the conclusion that you're insane. This is something that's come to the forefront with the rise of spirituality. I think people are ready to hear these stories and ready to have these experiences and willing to believe you.
You know, there is a spiritual awakening going on. The door is open. There's a spiritual awakening, and there's a lot of love out there. And as long as we can just keep reaching out to anybody that's hurting or suffering, it's our obligation to do that. It's our obligation.
Now, what, in all of these life-altering moments for both of you, what was the takeaway personally? And we only have about 2 minutes left. I don't know if each one of you can weigh in on a minute or so. What was your takeaway, Lilia, for you from having these type of experiences?
Service. At the age of 3, I had my first near-death experience, and I was told that I would find these books, the St. Germain series. They didn't tell me the name. They just told me I would find a set of books, and that when I studied them and applied them, that I would one day share them with the world, and they would answer the questions about light, love, and perfection. And here's what I was told. Life is eternal. There is no death. That the ascension is possible, and that the I am instruction will take you there. Now, I didn't remember all this until I woke up. I basically had a spiritually transformative experience at age 57, and an audible voice came to me and said, it's time to tell them about the St. Germain series. Well, it made my heart bounce out of my chest. But I reached out to Diane Corcoran, and thank God someone believed me and explained to me what happened. And I want to do that for the warriors or anybody looking for their answers. I want to give them the same relief that Diane gave me because she knew. And now that I know and all you out there know, please help a warrior explain their experience. Just listen to them. Just listen.
And Bill, about 45 seconds left. What's your big takeaway from all of these experiences and the chance that you get to live and continue to share?
It's all about love. And to me, I wake up in the morning, it's how can I love? How can I share? How can I give? How can I serve? And when we reach that point, it's a lot easier to handle all the other difficulties in life because you realize we're all one. We're all here as one big group. It's all the small stuff is not important. Love is the only answer.
You know, I hope a lot of people heard that.
On the show.
Yeah, I hope a lot of people heard that and can, respect that and make it a mantra, because I think if more people acted that way, the world would be a better place. Thank you both for being a part of the show this evening. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned. When we come back, we've got more to discuss. Angels in the Trenches. That's next right here on the best in anomalous talk radio. This is Midnight in the Desert.